Introducing that king of fun, the one who's okay with us kids, the Magic Burger King!
In person?
Yay!
Back to Mark looking good. Oh, welcome back to Mark looking good.
I'm having fun.
Sparky Marky, punch yourself in the face. Punch yourself in the face. Punch, 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 punch.
Should I like do a little dance or like make a little noise to have for the intro or just
Yeah. Welcome to the pod, Sparky Marky.
Mark. Mark.
What is happening, guys? Welcome back to Bucher's Badger Boys Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Bucher. I'm joined, as always, by my lovely co-host, Kyle Jordan. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing great. Sore from a little bit of pickleball yesterday and still just riding the wave of the draft. So all good here.
Yeah, following up draft weekend was a freaking blast, man. And we are here with one of the most improved teams since the draft. Spoiler alert. Welcome to the pod, Sparky Marky.
pleasure to be here, boys. I'm excited to talk draft, to talk post-draft moves, and see what those power rankings look like now that everyone's got a full roster.
Hell yeah. Well, like Mark just said, we're going to quickly break down some waivers and some trades because you guys have been active. I love how degenerate this league is. We've already got multiple trades just since draft. Got a lot of waiver pickups too. Everybody fill their roster out. And then we will break down each of your rosters for a few minutes. We'll talk about who's improved, who has not improved since the draft with me, Kyle, and Charlie ranked you all. So without further ado, I'm about to share my screen. We'll look at the waivers and trades. You guys want to do trades or waivers first?
Let's do waivers. I think there have
Yeah.
been a couple that
Good call.
deserve some attention. And maybe there's some which would be like, what the hell was that person thinking?
Can you see my screen?
Not quite yet.
Not yet, no. Just your beautiful faces.
It's doing something. All right, we're good.
All right, perfect.
It's still loading on mine, but
I see trades.
Yeah, sorry.
You're good.
Don't look at those yet.
All
All
right.
right, let me go to the first page.
Yeah, there were some fun ones. I'm glad we're doing this one first. I forgot about some of the pickups.
There have been a lot of pickups, man. Wow, okay, so
Yeah.
something at the front. Yeah, here we go. Holy cow. Let me do a more than 20 page. Let's do 50 page.
Yeah, I like that.
Great job to all you guys. I appreciate how quick everybody was making the pickups. All right. We're finally now.
Those were some fake Ray moves.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we're getting to the pre-draft. Yeah, one over maybe. Oh, jeez.
Oh, you know,
okay.
because I made it 50, it's now suddenly just completely different. That's why. Okay.
Okay. Well,
Here
this
you
makes
go.
sense. This is the beginning.
Starting here with. So they're mostly on the next page. Really quick, just shout out if you have any strong opinions, either of you guys, on Rafaela, Singer, Tana, Weathers. Everybody up.
I think Rafaela has since been dropped, if I remember correctly. But just calling out, you kind of already alluded this to Mark. I love the Spencer Jones pickup. And then also Papa Mark. I really like the Jason Adam pickup. I had a similar bid in for Jason Adam. He's a guy that I kind of wish I drafted there at the end. Especially in our league where holds do count. I think he's extremely valuable. And Race Sync, that's also Mark.
That one's Griff.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, that I'm getting the names confused.
That's because they're very confusing.
They're really
I did that on
confusing. Okay, so Race Sync, Spencer Jones is Griff.
No. Say rank is Mark. Ray Sync is a Griff.
Oh, see,
I think the
mean-
Robbie Ray one's excellent too. Robbie Ray's somebody I didn't bid 200. I'm surprised Griffin in the no $0 bid world we live in now bid 200. But I think Robbie Ray's a good stash.
I was trying to say both. Yeah, so heavy bid, but agreed.
Yeah. One of the under the radar pickups here that I think deserves a great shout out is Brad with the Ryan Weathers pickup there for $15.
A lot of velo added.
Yep.
He has been the velo king of the spring. He's striking guys out left and right, and he's probably locked into a rotation spot at this point in Miami now. Edward Cabrera got hurt over the weekend. Everyone is dropping in the rotation like flies. He might be their number 3 at this point and could be a huge breakout for Brad. So that's a great pickup. The other ones, love the Dustin May and Robbie Ray pickups. I tried to stash both of them as well. I did not. Is 200 too much
Yeah.
this early? I'm
Yeah,
just
I think
curious what
significantly
that's
so. I'm not sure what he's doing there. Maybe he meant 2 or 1, and he put 201.
I think I put in like a 22, and I thought that was really high.
Yeah.
I bid
And
14.
then
Yeah.
14.
Let's not forget too. Mark just said he was the velo king of the spring, and that's an amazing rhyme there. I think I want to somehow go back and edit. So when we introduce Mark, we introduce him as the velo king of the spring.
Freaky,
take
freaky,
it.
fresh king of the spring.
Good job there,
Um,
Mark. But yeah,
only
you're
other
absolutely
one
right. Griffin
here.
paid too much.
Shout out Zach for the Mick Abel pickup as well. Sneaky pitching prospect, even though there's no such thing as a pitching prospect these days. I also had a bid in for him, but yeah, great pickup there.
Yeah, Ton's awfully right. There's no such thing as a pitching prospect. But there were a lot more moves too. I won't be able to fit them all on the screen. It's
Yeah,
kind
we
of
were
pointless to even try.
on Saturday.
I don't know
Yeah,
if
it's
I
kinda
want to
pointless
talk
to try.
about all of these because there's some guys who keep getting dropped, and it's
Yeah,
like, well, let's keep them out on the waivers.
exactly. Well, and like you said, Rafael has been since picked up, but he was cut initially.
Okay.
Just quickly, is there anybody here? I have a couple I will talk about, but let's just quickly. Anybody here? I think similar to Griffin's, I liked Robbie Ray a lot. I think Pete Armstrong is one of the best prospect pickups we had made, but Charlie's bid a lot on him.
Yeah. But
yeah, you
good
can't take the waiver money with you. A lot of people last year did not spend all their waiver money.
But it's a good thing we don't have $0 bids now.
Yeah, exactly. I think we may have corrected the other way. Like, for example, I think I like Pete Armstrong more as a prospect than almost any of the other ones who were picked up. But like Tyler Black by Brendan for 22, I'd much rather have Tyler Black for only 2% of my fab as opposed to 17% by Charlie. But Charlie got probably the best prospect, I think, on this little set here. Roman Anthony, I wanted him back for $1. Good job there, Griff.
I think good
You
job
guys remember
to.
this?
I'll only make one comment. I think good job to Eric. I think Tyler Wells for $2. Wells started really hot last year. I think he'll be in the rotation, and I think he'll be hot again. Even if he's not in the rotation, he'll definitely have an important role early on that, unlike many leagues, I think will be valuable in our league.
I like the take.
Yeah, there are, looking at this again, the 3 things that I would just applaud here. Again, Zach picking up the injured Ronnie Mauricio, if that's how, I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. I just think it's really smart to fill those IL spots right now with the guys who are hurt. So shout out to the teams that were on top of that in putting those guys directly, filling those spots. And, who knows what comes down the line. I think I had like 8 bids in. The other one, not to continue to praise Griffin, but the Victor Scott pickup was someone who I was also watching. I think he could steal, if he comes up, potential 30 stolen bases. Who knows what's going on in that St. Louis outfield right now. And then the last one goes to Kyle, who since dropped him though, so bad. But the James Paxton pickup originally, I loved. I think I told you that when I saw you over the weekend, but I'm happy you dropped him because I was able to snag him up.
Yeah, James Paxton is basically Hyunjin Ryu from 8 years ago, where it's like the 5th Dodgers starter who's a lefty, gets hurt all the time, but when he's healthy, maybe he'll be good.
Yep, he's going to put up some good numbers, I think. So nice pickup, Mark.
Any of these guys, as I'm scrolling up, you guys think are super awesome? Obviously, we know Mark thinks that's a pretty good pickup there of a James Paxton. I think Miz getting Painter for $1 was one I liked a lot.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to hold a pitcher, he's arguably the top 1 or 2 pitching prospects in baseball. I know he's missed so much time, but I do feel pretty confident he'll be up sooner rather than later if he ever gets healthy. And I think Brad getting chased a lot is good too. Obviously, a lot of prospect pickups happen, so it's easy to talk about the prospect ones. They're pretty exciting right now. Well, I give Miz the praise there too. I'm not sure what he's doing with Jace Jung. That one I don't like as much, but fill your spots. What about you guys?
The Maeda pickup by you.
Oh yeah, your dad cut Maeda. That was interesting. I was shocked by that.
I can't remember if I was telling you guys this while we were drafting at Kyle's on Friday night, but he texted me during the draft or right after it, and he said he hated that pick, which I don't know why, because I thought it was a good pick. I think he got him for a couple
He paid a
bucks.
buck for it. Yeah, it was a buck. Yeah,
He could have been something.
he's
So
immediately my SP like one now with Garrett Cole out.
yeah. But Eric Fetty is also someone to take a flyer on. So, get your guys.
Yeah.
He came back from, was it Korea or Japan, and has been not dominant, but also the AJ Smith Shawver pickup by Brendan there stands out.
Yeah.
A lot of potential there.
The Kirkering pickup, I don't like dropping Smith Shaver, especially because I think last time I checked, I didn't see. Maybe I'm wrong. I wasn't sure if Raymond even filled his minor spots. He must have with
He did.
okay. I think he has Cruz and maybe one other guy. But I thought the Walker Jenkins pickup by Nick was really good. I think he should have been owned. So I was kind of surprised to see him out there.
Yeah, I obviously agree. By putting the bid in for him, I don't know. I like Eddie Rosario a lot too. Someone should pick him up if it's not me getting him back in a day or two. But Walker Jenkins feels to me like not quite what Junior Caminero was a year ago, but someone who's going to be contending for #1 prospect at the end of the year. So maybe I'm wrong though too. We'll see.
I considered him over what's his name from Detroit, Clark, who I picked up
Yeah.
during the draft. I was between the two.
To be clear, he's clearly not the #1 prospect right now, and he's probably more than a year, maybe even 2 years away. But if he just rakes all season, I could see him being somebody who gets like a late call up, a chance to break camp next year. If nothing else, I have a chance to maybe have the rights to him if he ends up breaking camp next year.
Yeah, it's a 2025 play.
It's speculative for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not for this year.
Why don't we move to trades unless you guys have any final takeaways with all these pickups? There's a lot of them.
No, I
Yeah,
think
let's do
now
it.
all the prospects have been picked up, and it's just guys, taking $1 bids, shots on people who are having decent springs at this point.
I agree. All right, so I guess the third one down happened right before the draft started. And by before it started, I mean a couple days before. But we didn't break it down last time. Colton Cowser for Pete Kerr Armstrong, who obviously Pete Kerr Armstrong has since been cut. Cowser, Griffin was going to Griffin was going to cut him. He was not able to move him. Having an amazing spring though. You guys feel like it's just since Armstrong was cut too, mid for mid. Someone
think
win this trade.
It was just a cash management trade, right? Like
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
they
think
both
you're
got cut before the draft, didn't they?
Yeah.
Or at least I know Cowser did.
I think you're basically right. All right.
Yeah.
Well, since the draft, we've had 2 trades. Let's go over the big one first. So Louis Varland for Jamison Tyone between me and Griffin. What do you guys think of that one? That's kind of the blockbuster we've had since the draft. Mark, we'll go to you first as the guest.
Oh, okay. I think it's too early to say definitively, like you won this trade or Griffin won this trade. If I had to pick a side, I think I lean Italian just a little bit, just because he's more of a proven commodity. I know he doesn't throw as hard. I know he doesn't have the extension that Varland has, and that's been the big thing this spring. But I think Italian put it together towards the end of last year. And now, granted, I've also been consuming a lot of pitcher list, and that's been Pollock's guy all off season, all late last year. He did an interview with him, so I may be drinking the tea a little bit there. But he's also since gotten hurt, so it may work out in your favor. But 55-45 in favor of Griffin here, if not 50, maybe even 52-48 in favor of Griffin. I don't think you can say, oh, this is a definitive win either way, but I'm sure you probably have a stronger opinion.
Reasonable take. Kyle, what do you think? Is it pretty even? Did I lose it slightly or did I get blown out like Mark's saying?
I don't. Maybe Tyon is a blind spot for me, but I like Varland more. I think at this level, to be completely honest, this is kind of the middle grouping of pitchers I don't necessarily know that much about, and so I try to pick a select group of guys who I think are, my guys or undervalued, whatever you want to call them, sleepers. And so these are just 2 guys I happen to not know a whole lot about, but I do like Varland. And I like what Minnesota has done with all of their pitching. So maybe I don't have a lot of insight, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, truthfully, this is not I wish I could pretend that there's like some sort of deeper thing I know or that Griffin maybe knew. I think this truthfully is just a case of he got Varland pretty early for $1. I don't know if you guys noticed during the draft, I had only $1 bids basically. So when I nominated Tyon, it was just because he was going to be like my first pitcher I got. I got him for $1, which I think is a really solid spot to have him in. He's probably like SP 50, maybe SP 60 or 70, depending where you have him. I think you're making a good point, Kyle, where I feel like after like 50, everybody talks about like the glob. I feel like then we have the super glob where it's just like they're all ass. Not only are they all like mediocre, they're all just not good,
But-
including probably Tyon and Varland. But I like Varland better personally because I think Varland can touch triple digits and he has a little bit in spring training. If he gets a job, he's currently likely going to get the 5th starter role while Tony Disco is hurt, Discofani. So if he gets that and runs with it, I think there's a chance he's actually pretty solid. If he's terrible, I cut him. I was going to probably maybe cut Tyone anyway. Griffin probably just feels like he'd rather have this slightly more safe option. I don't think Tyone's ever going to lose his rotation spot. Varland might, but I think there's more outcomes here where Varland is good and like worth having for most of the year.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, especially with players that are $1, there's that focus on this additional embedded value beyond just the savings for 2024, right? You could keep them for $6 next year. So what's the higher upside?
Agreed. Yeah, and that's a great way to say it, basically. If we're going to do it really simply, Tyone in a 14-team league with all the pitching spots we have and all the starts we have, Tyone should definitely be owned and definitely should probably be taken over Varland generally. They're pretty close in ADP across most of the sites. But Tyone is likely going to be like SP 58 or SP 68 or something like that. Varland's probably going to be like outside the top 100 or he'll be like 42. And I'd rather have a little bit upside. Griffin probably just wants stability, which I think shows in the way Griffin kept all his pitchers.
Yeah.
That's not
Well
even the
said.
fun trade, though. Let's move on to the next one here. The blowout one. The reason Mark is on the pod. So Raymond Zink, in his return to the league, makes a move pretty quickly, too, here. He deals away Jose Ramirez and Jose Siri. So bye-bye, Jose. No way, Jose, says Raymond. Mark gives back Grayson Rodriguez, Gleyber Torres, and Kyle Harrison, a Kyle. So a little 3 for 2 here. Big players moving, though, here. Mark, I went to you first, and you're involved. So Kyle, I'll go to you first this time. What do you think here?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to see Kyle's go, first of all. But yeah, so I think this is an interesting one where Ray did tell me that he's trying to compete this year, trying to at least get top 5. And I think Ray is a good player, so obviously he has a chance to do that. I think if I were in his position, I would be trying to sell my big pieces away like he's doing here. So I think it's a win for Raymond from that perspective. But if I had to pick a side of the trade, I would definitely pick Mark's side. I think getting Jose Ramirez is awesome. He's getting Jose Siri. I'm not a huge Jose Siri guy, but just filling your outfield, great. It stinks to lose Grayson Rodriguez, and I think despite loving Glaby Baby, I don't think he's really a keeper for next year at $31. So I think it was really smart for Mark to sell Glaber, just knowing that, hey, we're going to get a full year of Jose Ramirez. This is the best time to buy. And then Kyle Harrison, he's a great prospect, but he's just a prospect. So I really like it for Mark.
Bless you.
Sorry, as soon as Kyle stopped talking, I literally had to sneeze, and I just gave us 2 seconds of blank space there. Mark, we'll go to you last because you're involved. I'll give my take real quick.
Cool.
And I think Kyle's being pretty reasonable there. I think it's probably a little bit closer to being a toss-up. When it happened, I looked at it and I thought pretty quickly. And I've also heard from Raymond what you said, Kyle, where he's trying to compete. But more so, I do think Mark's closer to finishing in the money or contending for the top spot or 2 than Raymond is right now.
Yeah.
So I love getting the best player in the trade, basically. I think it's hard to not win when you get the best player in the trade. That said, I think the best long-term value, probably all 3 of us agree, is Grayson Rodriguez, the best long-term piece. So if you're coming from a position of Raymond where you don't have any real long-term keepers, generally, you're looking just at mass value. I think it's hard not to sell as a win getting Grayson and having dibs to Gleyber. Gleyber was really good last year. I think Gleyber's going to have a better year than it sounds like maybe you do. I don't think he's going to be incredible, but I think there's a chance he's the same way I kept Bregman or you kept Randy this past season, Kyle. If he breaks out the way he did last year, even adds a little bit in a contract season, maybe steals some more bases, maybe tries to hit a few more bombs. I could see him in the mid-30s being keepable. I'm not saying he for sure is, but I think there's a chance he will be.
I think he would be 41 or 42 though.
I think he was $31.
31.
And then don't you multiply by a third, so 10, so $41.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because remember the keeper inflation next
Good
year.
point. Good point.
I'm just saying because I
No,
actually
it's
really
a very good point.
I actually really like Glaber.
It's
So
you click more on their player profile, Nick, and that's where you can see their salary up there in the top right.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's an
Just-
excellent point, Kyle, and I'm glad you said it because I was going to
Okay.
say he was going to be 36. I forgot we did
Okay.
that. All
Yeah.
the same, though, I don't know if the $5 really changes a ton of what I think there. If he's a top 80-ish player next year, like let's say he has one of his better seasons and signs either back with the Yankees or somebody's a good lineup. I think we just saw 20, 25, 30% inflation on most guys this past draft here. I don't necessarily think he's not keepable around cost is all I'm trying to get to. So I think
yeah.
Raymond has a very defensible stance on this. I like Jose Siri too. He was one of my favorite sleepers. I remember at the draft, Mark and Raymond going after him. I had no money, so I wasn't allowed to be involved. But he's another example of like the Andrew Vaughn 3, 4, 5 years back now, whatever it was, where just everybody has their money. He's everybody's wide awake sleeper. I don't know if there's a ton of keeper value with him. But again, the greater point here is he wants to go 30-30 or 20-30. Jose Ramirez does that literally all the time anyway. And Mark, I think you've moved up, well, spoiling probably where I would have you, had you in the middle of the pack starting the power rankings. But you definitely are someone who I think is shooting for the money right now in a way that is exciting. So I think slightly I lean your way. I do get it for you, Raymond. I'm not just saying it to be nice. I do get it. Raymond's in a unique spot compared to probably everybody else, in my opinion.
Also, like, let's pretend Glaber was $60. Great. Raymond gets another trade bait that he can continue to flip throughout the year. So this is a rare one where I think it could be a win-win. But again, if I had to choose, I like the top player, and it's definitely Jose Ramirez for me.
We mostly agree then, because
Yeah.
I think it's probably right down the line. And well said about the fact you could trade him away. Raymond does have another chip there if he does end up going out of it. I think Raymond all year on trades is going to be tough for me to break down just because I know he thinks he's competing, and I'm not saying he's not competing. Raymond's so good at this; he's won the league a bunch of times. I just see it as a tough uphill battle for him, and I think he uniquely will be able to have win-win trades people in a way that most people can't.
Well said. Yeah. I agree.
Anyway, though, Mark, we have you on for this reason. Tell us what happened here.
Yeah, I think Raymond won the trade.
So does Raymond.
No, so to Kyle's point, now is the time to buy someone like that. After bottoming out on pretty much May 1st last year, all I could think about was trying to be as competitive as possible this year. But knowing going into the draft that Raymond was going to end up with, he had told me before the draft, right? Ramirez was going to end up on his team no matter what. So spending $85, $90 of my budget was not in the cards, unfortunately. So pretty much as soon as it ended, it was trying to figure out a way to get Ramirez. It, like Kyle said, it hurts giving up Grayson. He could be, if he continues to develop the way everyone thinks he will, top 15, potentially top 10 starter in the next 2 to 3 years for cheap. But something that Kyle has said on this podcast in the past, it's not always about having the surplus value. It's not always about, thinking ahead, like, oh, I'll keep this guy for 2025 and 2026. Like, I wanted to try and compete now. And that's what drove trying to get Ramirez, someone who could go 30-20, 25-30, whatever the homers and steals combo is there. I'm higher on Siri than it sounds like you are, Nick. Not taking too much stock into this, but both him and Kevin Cash said 30 stolen bases this year is the goal for him.
Wow.
And he hit 20 home runs last year, or close to it. He was also someone who came out super hot last year and then got hurt, which I can't remember if it was a shoulder or a wrist, which for a hitter, never fun and can definitely derail your whole season. Even when you come back healthy, are you really truly healthy from that trying to hit? So, really I look at it as Grayson for Glaber, or Grayson and Glaber for Ramirez and Siri, because Harrison was a throwaway for me. He's, he has the potential, but he wasn't someone that I was trying to build around or that I really thought would be a huge contributor this year. Someone that hopefully Raymond can build on. But yeah, the goal is to try and finish in the money, ultimately win the league. But if this gets me closer to fourth or third, I think I would do it 10 times out of 10, knowing everything now.
I'm with you, dude. I mean, and just to be clear, Siri's awesome. I just meant that he probably went for, I think he's a great guy. If you get him for 10, you can keep for a couple of years, and the 20s or whatever he is. You probably don't have a huge kid scheme, but maybe you do. And to add to your point, by the way, he's, I think, in the top 5 or 6% of baseball in sprint speed. So 30 bases, like the way the rules are now, I know he said 30. dude, what is stopping him if he plays every day? If he gets off to a hot start from stealing 50, and then it's just a ridiculous romp in a way that is exciting. And like you said, Mark, the very first thing you said is so damn true. Kyle said before, I hope I preached it too, is I think there's a competitive advantage here to going for it, and especially going for it before the season starts or early in the season when you get more games out of Ramirez and Siri and just maximizing that shit. This is really good to see, I think, from like a league competitive standpoint. I love this.
Yeah, I don't think it would have done any good making this trade, May 1st, May 15th, end of May, when, a third of the season is already over. And if you're already in 8th place, probably not digging out of that hole at that point. So go get your guys. And, to the point of the Raymond trade, like we've all said it, he's good. He knows what he's doing. And this is the kind of move that I could easily see him being able to build and turn around within 2 years to be in contention, not just, hey, it's going to be.
And now, an exciting message from Burger King.
We know you're watching the game, but you're waiting for something more exciting. Ready? Broiling beef frying nearly 2-to-1 in a coast-to-coast survey. Not better than baseball? Think about it. Nearly 2 out of 3 people chose broiling. Burger King broils. McDonald's and Wendy's fry. Okay, now back to baseball. But the second it's over, everybody up. Click off your sets. Come on to Burger King.
Back to Mark looking good. Oh, welcome back to Mark looking good. All right, Mark, as you were saying before the commercial jumped right in there.
Oh, you want me to keep going?
It was Siri time.
Yeah, talking about Siri.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of that got picked up or not, so I won't go into it in depth. But Siri was someone I tried hard to get last year from, I believe, Dom. Couldn't make it work. Was someone I was all over this spring. Hopefully the steals are there. And then I was also just praising Raymond because I think this is the type of move that will help him be sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry.
Thank you for sharing, Kyle.
Looking at my team now. My bad.
Let's look at Kyle some.
Uh,
Kyle said, I'm not getting enough attention here. We're talking too much about Raymond and Mark.
I guess we finished trades.
Yeah, that is the trades.
Yeah,
so now that we're back, why don't we just start with, we can start with your team first, Kyle, since we're on you if you want. We just go down. I think what we're going to do is we're not going to re-rank everybody. That's a pretty extensive exercise. It's fun to do, but it doesn't make a ton of sense to do it weekly. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, in the perspective of the ranks me, Kyle, and Charlie gave, we're just going to say how your draft went, talk about some of your picks on each team. We'll tell you if you've improved, not improved, how much. So, for example, on Kyle, we might say, I like this pick. I hate that pick. Kyle, I thought going in was pretty much a contender for the money, one of the top 5-6 teams. Now I think probably a little bit higher. Maybe now you're 4th. So starting out here, Mark, since you're not Kyle, why don't you say what you think about Kyle's team? How does draft go?
You're gonna have to bear with me because I'm looking at the screen on my phone. So let's see here. Shane Bieber, Glasnow, Jared Jones, Mason Miller, Rayu, Brash, King, Minter, Suarez. I mean, before I didn't do a power rankings like everyone else in the league, but I think before the draft, Kyle was considered to be in the money, and I don't think that has changed based on how Kyle drafted. I think, he filled out his team with solid values for the spots that he needed. Very interested by the Jared Jones pick there in Pittsburgh, the pitching prospect, air quotes there. He could be something for $1 that turns into a building block for years to come. And, hopefully he's exciting. And I touched on it during the transactions, but I love filling up the spots with injured guys. I know you got a couple red flags down there where hopefully they get added to the IL, and then you can fill out the rest of your pitching staff with dart throws. So
same. I want them to move over.
Yeah,
that's driving me crazy.
That was very annoying.
Sorry.
No, you're good. But yeah, I think Kyle had a very solid draft. I'm trying to pull up the results on my computer now. If one of you two wants to jump in,
yeah, you're good. Let me tell you how good Kyle is or how bad Kyle is. I mostly agree with you. I think Kyle, I love some of your frugal picks. I think Adames and LeMahieu in the middle of your infield. LeMahieu's either going to be someone you cut or he's going to lead off and be good. I think there's not a ton of outcomes in between. That's pretty exciting to me. For $1, I love that. For $8, it's not $1, but also doesn't have to be because Willie Adames is pretty solid anyway. I was targeting him myself. I think there's a pretty good chance he's traded in the next couple weeks. And if not now, probably by midseason. I don't think he's staying in Milwaukee. But again, even if he does, I think he got good value there. I love that. And then we talked a little bit about this previously, but on the pitching side, you stashed some solid pitchers there in Baz and Springs, but you paid 21 for Bieber. I don't think you ever paid for Bieber. I like Bieber a lot this year. You add Velo, that's pretty exciting to me. But just I am curious, what is the highest you would have gone on Shane Bieber?
At that point, I think I had my max bid just north of 30. I was specifically saving for Bieber. He was my number 1 target in the draft. That was running under the assumption that I didn't get Castillo, and I didn't expect to, right? I think my max bid to start was 60. And so if I spent 60 on Castillo and went $1 for everyone else, I'd be happy. But to be honest, this was kind of like my plan. So, I mean, I didn't get everyone I wanted, just like everyone, but Bieber was my priority. Like you said, mainly because of Velo, and then mainly because my pitching was my weakest, the weakest part of my team, kind of by design.
Yeah, I did a good job cleaning up a little bit too. King too, I think he's an exciting guy. So you have, I think, a team that when I ranked you third week and a half ago, I feel like you have not moved for me one bit. I still think you're probably, like Mark said, finishing in the money, right around there. Looking at it too from a category standpoint, I don't really see any strong weaknesses. I see a couple of strengths. Pitching, I think, still is probably the weakest side of it, probably the starting pitching. But honestly, if Bieber does not get hurt from that added velo and pitches anywhere close to what he used to be when he had 94, Glasnow stays healthy, you've got very solid pitching too. So I don't know. How do you feel? Did you come out of it? You said sort of what you had planned. Do you feel like you have significantly improved? Do you feel like you're still where you were before?
I feel pretty good about it. To be honest, my number 1 frustration right now is exactly what Mark called out. Just all of my spots need to get in place because I have targets on the waiver right now, and I can't pull the trigger. I did not want to drop Paxton. I picked up Will Warren, which is kind of maybe a dumb dart throw, but honestly, I did that on the Garrett Cole news, and my thought is that Jared Jones might have a spot, and honestly, Will Warren is one of my favorite pitching prospects, and I think he might get a spot. Hopefully Cole is healthy, but yeah, so I want to move my team around, but I feel like I'm kind of tied up right now just with these flags. But yeah, I feel good.
And your biggest acquisition too, by the way, is very clearly the new logo. I love the green Cloblin or Goblin, pardon me.
No, Green Cloblin.
Green Cloblin's even better, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a Globlin because I'm embracing the pitching glob the whole
I love
year.
it.
Watch out. I'm going to be on the waivers. You drop a guy, the Globlin's going to get him.
He's going to globble him up, baby, just like last year. But all right, Kyle, good draft overall.
Thanks.
We'll just start with the top there. We'll work our way down.
Alrighty.
Welcome to analysis, Dom. So, Mark, as the resident Dom expert, what do you think of Dom here?
Huge Dom guys. So we got Adley, Abreu, Albies, Hayes, Edmund, Kim, Lowe, Duvall, Friedel, Matos, Newbar, Robert Jr., Cronenworth, and Martinez. Right off the bat, looking at his hitters.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, I know it's hard to move. I love the Martinez buy. He hit 30 home runs last year, 35 home runs, something like that.
Missed like a month and a half too.
So it's tough having that util only guy, and I know he's not signed yet, but hitters don't need as much time as pitchers to get ramped up coming into spring training. Plus, most teams don't start in 8 days; they start 2 weeks from now. So I feel like if within the next day or two he can sign somewhere solid, that could be a huge pickup. Couple of injury bugs there that do scare me. The Nuke bar, I believe it was funny during the draft when yourself, Kyle, Eric, Griffin, he came up and everyone was kind of on him for a second, trying to put in bids. And I can't remember who said it, but someone was like he broke his ribs today, or it was revealed that his ribs were broken from the injury. So for $6, if he can come back healthy, I think that's a huge buy. I know he had Tommy Edman before for $24, $26. So being able to get him back for 5 there, I think is also huge, but it scares me. The wrist, he's not healthy. He's still ramping up, and hitters and wrists for me are not the combo that I want to be chasing this year. It scares me. Again, even when they say they're healthy, I just don't think that holding the bat, hitting the ball when the ball hits the bat, I don't think they're going to be as strong as, if they hadn't had the surgery or the injury in the first place. It's not hard hitting analysis there, but it's just something that, I'm trying to avoid. So hopefully he's healthy. Hopefully he's hitting from both sides, and he's hitting for power, and he's stealing bases and playing all over the diamond. So you get all that flexibility. Other than that, nothing else really stood out to me either way, crushed it or disliked in terms of the hitters.
Good take, Kyle. You anything different? Anything you disagree with?
I'll just make 2 quick compliments on the hitting side. It's a shame that Hayes ended up being so expensive. I think weird draft, lots of inflation, but Hayes is a guy that I liked buying into this year. He was a target of mine, just significantly out of my price range, but good exit velocities coming out of camp. Hopefully he can, turn around and have a great season like he did for the tail end of last season on the hitting front. I also like Manzardo for $3. I think kind of post hypey and really, really nice that you can get him and stash him in the minor spot. But I think he will play this year, and I think he'll be pretty good.
We might break camp even.
Yeah.
I don't have anything especially special to add to that. I think you guys did a great job there. I was going to call it Martinez. I was going to call it Newbar. And I do like Manzardo a lot. He's in my archetype of guys who are kind of like Brett Beatty, who's out there right now on waivers and stuff too. The guys that have failed once, maybe failed twice. Oh, sorry. No one knows about the guy who's the most owned of all the players on waivers, I'm sure. No, sorry. I wasn't trying to do that to you. But my point being, I love guys who have maybe failed a little bit and then end up being amazing. And I think he has a chance to do so. I think overall in the hitters, good job. I think he paid fair value just because, like Kyle said, the inflation was crazy. And I think the inflation this year, we'll talk about it probably overall in a lot of these, really impacted the middle class more than anything else. I think that most expensive guys actually didn't go for as much as I thought they would. Not in a crazy way. Like, I just think they were a little bit under what I thought they'd be going for. I think basically, though, after the top 50 players, maybe even top 30 players in the auction who were available went, no one really went for sub like 25 who was any good at all. So I think it all sort of came out there. All I have to say, Dom paid for the guys he likes. I think it's okay there. On the pitching side, Tanner Scott Dom specifically is one I love. I think it's a really good pick for you. He's probably their closer, and probably next year he's someone you might want to keep even. Yeah, if Say's been worth twice as much. So I think you did a pretty good job overall. I don't have any other amazing takeaways from the pitching side here. I don't know if Kyle or Mark, you want to add anything crazy about pitching?
Kyle, I'll defer to you to start.
I'll jump in with one. Kind of like what you said, Nick. It's hard to get anyone for under 20, $25 who's good. And I know Christian Javier had a bad season last year, but he was another one of my major targets. I preferred Bieber, but Javier was kind of my next guy up that I really wanted to get. He's another guy. His velocity's up. He looks healthier. He lost some weight. And I think it's pretty clear that the pitch clock did impact some guys. Not that, Javier was not Alek Manoah, but I think it did impact him. And, if he's in a little bit better shape now, his velo is back to 2020 when he had that great season. I looked at the stuff from what is it? It's StatCast. I looked at StatCast. His pitch, his four seamer is like identical now to 2022. So does that bring the K percentage back up? Like probably a little bit. So I don't know. To me, he's going to be a really good pitcher this year.
Yeah, I don't think there's a ton of risk there at all. I think that's a good pick too.
Yep.
Any last words on Dom from either of you?
Are we allowed to swear on these when it goes onto YouTube, or is that going to get it flagged? Just curious.
We can fucking swear, baby.
We can swear. No.
Yeah, you can. The only thing that got flagged, I used. It's so weird because almost every episode I use a song that is not our song. Like I use real music.
I love how you say it that way. It implies we have our song.
What is our song?
Me and Kyle have a song.
Taylor Swift, our song. No, not to get. I wasn't going to get super graphic with it anyway. I'm a slut for Christian Javier. I had him last year. He burned me. I did not know about the pitching clock issues. I know he was a little on the heavier side, so if that's the reason why he led to my terrible season last year, it makes me a little mad, and I might not love him as much. But great buy for $25. I think if he turns it around, that's a steal. And then this is just a me being me thing. Charlie Morton, I can't quit him. Even for $7.
Yeah.
I was going to be in on him. I had just taken too many dart throws at that point in the draft.
He's on the best team in baseball. He's gonna get a lot of wins.
Baseball, number 5 starter, should go out there and throw 6 innings every 5 days. Also not trying to be facetious or, to hurt your team, Dom. Keep him on your bench for the first 2 weeks. He is for his first 2 to 3 starts every year. He gets lit up. He walks guys, earned runs, bad whip. Make sure the matchup is solid and then throw him out there or let him warm up a bit, because just been burned by him at the start too many times, and then he turns into the sub-3 ERA guy who lights it up. So great buy there.
Love it. Yeah, I think Dom slightly moved his error up, not in a significant way, but I think he's slightly higher than where I ranked him coming into the draft. So good job, Dom, overall.
One final note, and I know we need to move on, but if Gosman is healthy and plays like he did last year, I mean, Dom's pitching staff could end up being really good.
Yeah.
And who gave him Bailey Ober? That was a mistake.
I really like Bailey Ober.
Bailey Ober's awesome, dude. He's so good.
Yeah. The Bear. The Ober.
Ooh.
All right.
Luis Robert and Bailey Ober.
On to the toast.
Oh,
It's toast time.
It's Braddon time, baby. All right,
I'm
Kyle, why
feeling
don't you go first
Bradish.
with Brad, because Mark's gone first previously, and you're kind of Bradish.
I'm feeling Bradish, Kyle Bradish, and it's Brad time. So, yeah, I'll just try to go fast here. I know there's a lot to say. So
you're good.
Buxton, I know he's a little expensive, but you know what? It's a 1-year rental maybe for Buxton. Probably sensible given all of Buxton's issues. I like it. I like throwing the dart out there. Buxton is talking about how good he feels, how he's going to run, how he's going to steal bases. Let's go for it. Let's shoot the moon, try to get a good player. So I really do like that buy. I'm not trying to make a joke.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, pitching. I actually really like the Matsui buy. He's only $2. So that is someone that you could keep, especially if he ends up being the closer of Suarez next year. Saves
Nola,
are gonna
maybe too.
Yeah.
Buy of the auction.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nola was one of the best values of the entire draft.
It's always the first guy or two.
Yep. I don't know what I'm not sure if that's just our group, Nick, or if that's most auctions, but even in football that I do with a lot of you guys, it's always like one of the first 5 or 6 guys, and they're just way cheaper than they should be. So great job, Brad, getting Nola. And I know Nola is actually someone Brad has liked since college. Brad, just a huge Brad guy. And so with Nola being kind of up and down each year, I think being on a bench, being on a rotation on Brad's team, it's probably a place that Nola likes. So he might have a big year this year.
I think it's a really well said point there. I think it's just a general auction thing, man. I think we've talked about this in person and also on this pod previously, but I think there's a lot to be said for Nola being one of like 3 or 4 really, really solid pitchers who are all in a similar tier or close to the same tier. And just the one that goes first or second, whether it's the first overall pick in an auction or the 3rd overall pick, whatever it is early on, there's other guys left. Everybody says, I'll buy the next one. I'll see what the price is first. And Brad ended up getting a steal here. So good job with that, Brad. I think Nola is the one I wanted to call out for sure. And without regurgitating everything Kyle said, just repeating myself like he did there. Well said, Kyle, about Buxton. I think Buxton could have gone a lot more than he did. I think he's going to have and Buxton either is going to be great because either he's going to get hurt like he always does, and you'll put him on your bench and you'll put him in the IL spots, or he's going to go like 30-30 himself and be a legitimate MVP candidate, I think. I'm not just shooting the moon there myself, Kyle. I think it's legitimately an outcome for him. I don't know if it's a likely one. Maybe it's like 10%. But the Twins are good, and Buxton's done it before. He hits the ball really hard. If he's remotely healthy, I think he's a great pick there. So those are my 2 big ones too. I think Rizzo's solid. You paid a lot for him. It's crazy. But again, late picks are all crazy. What about you, Mark?
Yeah. I would actually not as high on the Rizzo buy. I know $20 isn't an absurd amount, but selfishly, I don't want Rizzo to be good, so the Yankees are forced to call it Jones. But he's getting older. I know he had a concussion last year. So hopefully that's all behind him and he's getting back to hitting probably fifth, sixth in that lineup now with Judge and Soto and all those guys in front of him. So hopefully he's got a lot of guys on base and can get a lot of RBIs. But at that point in the draft, there weren't a lot of options left. So you got to, like you said, spend your money. Don't take it with you. I do. It wasn't a draft pick, but I know Brad also mentioned during the draft he was not regretting, but he was curious what his draft would have looked like if not keeping the $33 Santander. So just playing hindsight 2020, that could have been interesting. And then we already touched on it wasn't a draft, but Weathers and Boyle down there at the bottom, I think could turn into two very solid options. Especially with some of the injuries he's dealing with on the pitching staff already.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the only other one I'd be remiss not to say, because I had it written down, just in my notes and did not say it, is Cal Raleigh, who I almost kept. Catchers were cheap generally. $4 is really cheap though. And I think Cal Raleigh is probably like catcher 4 or 5. Great job with that one, Brad.
Yep.
Alrighty.
We're done with you, Brad. I think you've raised your stock very slightly. Similar to Dom, I think haven't drastically changed my mind, but I think you're probably a little bit higher than you were going in.
Yeah, now we're at the train stop. The train's in town.
Welcome to Brennanville. Let's head in the woods where he's camping with Griffin. Mark, what's going on in that tent? What do you see?
A lot of pause, not going to say it like that. A lot of youth on this team.
Oh my god!
It would have sounded so normal if you didn't stop first.
All right, Mark.
I was going to say a lot of young guys in that tent, but
you're asking about YouTube blocking us. I think they're definitely going to block us now.
No, so obviously Brendan was top 2 last year. Was in first for most of the year. The Marte suspension, less than 24 hours before the draft, I'm sure had to have hurt. But there are just a core of Judge and Soto is elite. Nolan Jones is also up there, but there's just so many guys, unproven guys, and I know they have the prospect pedigree, and they should, if they all hit at what they're supposed to be, it could be an amazing year for him, and he's loaded for years to come. But are we positive that Holiday and Churio, and I know Langford has all but made the team at this point, but does Mason Wynn, is he also locked in? Colt Keith, like I haven't been following these guys as closely, so I may be wrong and they've all made the team at this point, but that's just a lot of prospects there to be relying on for someone who finished second last year. And then the pitching, DeGrom's hurt right now and hasn't proven that he can stay healthy. I don't think he'll be back until after July, early August, maybe, if even that. And when he does come back, does he stay healthy? Verlander, same thing. I don't think he's out quite as long, but he's hurt right now, if I'm not mistaken. So, I'm going to trust what he did last year, but I, in terms of arrow pointing up or arrow pointing down after the draft, I hate to say it, but I think I'm going to have to say the arrow is pointing down a little bit after this.
Kyle, where do you land?
I don't differ too much. I think I would say arrow pointing up a little bit, because I think the tier I had Brennan in had a couple players, like I think Zach had a really good draft, and I think Roman, I trended him down a little bit, and I think we'll touch on that. But so I think Brendan is up a little on that for me personally. But like Grissom is a guy that I targeted. I think he's an exciting player this year. I think Mark really hit it. If all these guys end up being good this year, he's going to be hard to stop. But it's a high risk move, and I'll be honest, a lot of these young guys, they're not actually going to be that cheap like next year, right? So Marte, I'm a little surprised he didn't drop Marte before the draft, because now you're going to hold Marte for what? It's an 80-day suspension. And so he doesn't fit into an injury spot. He doesn't fit into a minor spot. You're just going to have to bench him. And that's really tough to deal with when you already have all of these other prospects. So you're already leveraging your bench to the fullest extent you can. I think he's pretty good on pitching. I do like the Rogers pickup for $1. I think that's a low risk, high reward prospect, and I mean not a prospect, but nonetheless, he had a really good season 2 or 3 years ago. And for $1, that is a case where, hey, he turns out to be great this year, you keep him next year. So there's an additional value. I do like Bautista even for $6, just to keep him in the IL. I mean, saves are going to be at a premium next year. So I think those are really my major call outs. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, I think you're both basically hitting it, even though you said slightly different things. I think Brendan, I had in my top 5. And like Mark said, he was second last year, led the league a lot of the way, took me to the final wire last year in September, and won it 2 years ago. And clearly has shown us Brendan knows exactly what the hell he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that said, though, the combination of everything you both already pointed out without saying all of it again, Judge already being banged up, and the number of green flags on this team, my inclination is Brendan is doing not a rebuild, but a retool. And I think it's likely, I think it's more likely, to put a gun to my head, that Brendan is selling Judge and he's selling Soto to get even more of these amazing prospects, because he already has like 4 of the top 5 and like 8 of the top 30 or something like that when I looked at it. I think it's more likely he's a little bit lower than where he was when I ranked him a couple weeks ago, and he ends up just being a powerhouse going into next season when he has a couple of them on really cheap deals like we talked about. I'm not for sure saying he's not going to be good. Brendan's obviously, again, proven. He's proven for multiple years now. He knows exactly what the hell he's doing. But unfortunately, I have to say the arrow is down. But like Kyle said, I think the arrow is probably up next year and definitely 2 years from now. I don't know. I'd be curious when we bring Brendan on next, how he sort of talks about what his philosophy is for this year. Because me and Kyle have talked a couple different times in the last month about some of the trades he made in the offseason, the draft approach, just maybe it's the way things fell, maybe what the targets were. I think Brendan is scaring me more a year or two from now than he is right now. But we'll see.
Okay. Well, we can move on to
all 3 of our number 1 team.
I was about to say the other team that was in the top 3 for one of the
Charlie?
rankings. Charlie Brown Bombers.
Mark, as the expert in all things Raymond's family, what do you think of Charlie Brown here?
I love me some Zink family. Let's take a look here. I'm just trying to remember who he bought and who he kept. I believe James Outman was a buy during the draft. If I'm not, no, he kept him, right?
That's one of his keeps, yeah. He had a lot of his roster filled out, if you recall, too. And if you want to take a second to look at it, I can go, or Kyle, you can go.
No, I can jump in.
I remember some of the main ones if you want me to just
call them why don't you go ahead, buddy?
And their cost. And Mark, you jump in with your thoughts, but Paul Goldschmidt for $49, Manny Machado for $79. Lourdes Gurriel was purchased in the draft $14. Tyler O'Neill for $11. Jackson Merrill for $8. And then the prospects, I think they were picked up off of wires, actually.
Yeah.
And from a pitching perspective, I think McKenzie might have been in the draft, $9.
Yeah.
I think the majority of these pitchers were kept. DL Hall was drafted $3. Am I missing anything, guys?
Yeah, you're mostly right on that, I believe. Charlie had, I think, close to 20 keepers, or right at 20 keepers. He was right around that number. He had most of his team filled out. There wasn't a ton for him to do. And he seems to have heeded me and Kyle's suggestion when he was on a couple weeks ago, saying, go for some stars here, because you have a lot of guys who are a little bit under cost or at cost. Most of your rosters filled out. Get some studs here. That said, though, do you think you got the Romans, Mark? Now you've had a chance to look at it. Do you think he's in a better spot now than you probably would have said he was a couple weeks ago? Do you feel like he sort of stayed the same? Did he get the right guys?
If this was, 2016, 2017, Goldschmidt and Machado would make me feel phenomenal. No, I mean, they still are elite hitters. I just don't know if they are what they were. And I think at this point in their career, you may be paying a little bit more for their name. And $80 Machado is a tough pill to swallow. That's pretty much the same thing that Ramirez went for, but he was the second ranked hitter available, the third, if I recall. So you got to spend your money to get him. But at that point, I think I would have been more in on Ramirez in the draft. $49 Goldschmidt again. He's having a rough spring. I think he struck out like 14 times already, which is not good. Now I can't remember if that number is accurate, but I was listening to a podcast this morning at like 4 a.m. And I heard it. So I do love the Jackson Merrill buy. That was someone that I was trying to target towards the end of the draft. I just didn't have enough money, and currently he's got the shortstop eligibility, but he's going to get outfield very shortly, which I love guys who you have the flexibility to move around. McKenzie for 9, great buy if he can stay healthy. That's been a problem for him the last year and a half. Love the DL Hall buy at $3. He should at this point be in Milwaukee's rotation out of camp, and everything that was coming out of Baltimore before he got traded was that he had put it all together to finally start being a starter. So hopefully now he gets that shot and can show everybody just how nasty his stuff is. I'm sure you guys had heard when he got hurt a while back, he had to actually learn how to use his secondary stuff. And then that's now paired with, not a super elite fastball, but one of the better four seams. So hopefully he can put it all together. I think Charlie probably held serve. I wouldn't say, hey, he shot up to, he was not in my top 3, even though I didn't make a power ranking before this. I don't think he's in the top 3 or after this, but he's definitely not, 7, 8, or 9.
What about you, Kyle? What do you think?
For me, he probably is still 7, 8, or 9. I think Machado and Goldschmidt, I think it was good that he bought them. But to answer your first question, Nick, I feel like it probably wasn't the optimal event for Charlie. I would much rather have Ramirez for $90, $95 and maybe even more. And he ended up going for 82. So I'm not blaming Charlie, because sometimes that's just how the draft goes. It's difficult when you have a lot of money, and frankly, there just wasn't that much out there to draft. And so I think that was kind of actually my whole thesis going into the draft, that of course you want as much money as possible going into the draft, but if you don't have the right guys to draft, what's it worth? With all of that said, to give some flowers, I really do like Tyler O'Neill for $11. I think that is potentially a huge steal. I could see that being similar to his purchase of Bellinger from last year. And yeah, I agree with everything Mark said. The only other thing I'll call out, I remember Charlie talking a lot about relief pitchers and how he'll never spend money on relief pitchers. And Iglesias was not from the draft, but he was a keeper for $9. So just wanted to point that out. You only have 2 relief pitchers. Or do you? Yeah, 2, right?
He picked up Estevez after the draft.
Yeah. So my point is, you only have 2, but you spent $10. So.
Yeah, I think if we play the memory music and we do a little flashback, Charlie said specifically when he was on here last week and a half with us, Kyle, Nick, you think I'm going to take all my money into the auction and I'm going to spend it irresponsibly? And I said, yes, you're super fiscally irresponsible, Charlie. You're going to make stupid buys. And I preface with that because, Kyle, you framed that beautifully. There were like 5 players better than Machado in the entire auction.
Yeah,
it's a little bit revisionist to say, clearly, I think everybody, including Charlie, would say, gun to their head, I'd rather have Ramirez for $3 more than Machado.
You're right.
Goldschmidt for 49 is expensive. But I want to make sure before I say that and just end with him, kind of like you did, Kyle, process, Charlie, I think I want to rescind that joke I made. Clearly, there's a joke also. I think you did about as good as you could have done. I don't think there was a ton more for you unless you just were really aggressive early and gone for Ramirez and maybe gotten the cheap Nola. I think you probably wanted to wait to see what the going price is. Like we said, everybody's prone to doing early on. But you only had a handful of spots to fill, and I think you got close to the best available outcomes. You cost yourself the chance to maybe have them be keepable guys in the future, but also who cares that much? For me, you've gone up very slightly. I had you, I believe, at 9. I think you're a little bit up, Charlie. You're not quite my 3, but you're definitely someone who I think is in a better spot now than you were going out of or prior to the auction, pardon me. Kyle's right. O'Neal's a great buy there. And I also think Lourdes Gurriel is too. Lourdes Gurriel, I think for the first time yesterday on Monday was the first time all spring he's not hitting the third or fourth spot in the lineup for the Diamondbacks. I think it's a pretty good offense. So I think the spots you had to fill between O'Neill, between Lourdes, between Machado and Goldschmidt, the cost is scary looking. Forget it. Who cares? It's just money. You can't take it with you. I wish you'd targeted slightly different guys. But again, it's very revisionist to say that. I think you did the best thing possible when you did buy them and say, look, I'm just getting the best guy there. So more than not, I'm happy with you. I don't think you're necessarily going to finish third again. Sorry. But good job, buddy. I'm proud of you, Charlie.
Alrighty. It's X Factor time.
Yeah.
So Eric, Team Eric.
Ah.
Mark, do you want to start with Eric?
Yeah, Mark, tell us about Eric.
He's a great guy. Someone you definitely want in your corner. No, let's take a look here. Right off the bat, love a $2 Moreno. I know catchers, you guys talked about it on one of your pods and then at the draft. I was shocked by how little catchers went. If we go through my team, we'll talk about it there.
Except for the ones I nominated, they all went for $2.
Yeah, well, you had so much money to spend.
I was like, damn it, let me have a catcher.
I really like the $5 MJ Melendez buy. I think that's a bounce back spot there, and was someone who I was also chasing there. I just didn't have the money or the roster spots at that point to push him. I do remember in the moment thinking 36 for Yoshida might have been a lot, but it is hard to find someone who's going to hit almost 300 and, play DH every day and get those at bats. So I'm still not in love with it, but I don't think I hate it as much as I did in the moment. Also sneaky bounce back $1 spot there with the Yohan Moncada. Again, that was someone who was injured last year, shoulders, wrists, arms, everything. So hopefully he can come back. Looking at the pitchers, a $2 Cano is, who knows what's going on in the Baltimore bullpen with Kimbrel loving to give up home runs left and right. Bautista's out for the year. I don't think he drafted Wells I don't think he drafted really any of the pitchers, but the $2 Rasmussen's good. I like that as well. I think he's got a solid team. I think he's at pushing the middle tier, like towards the upper half of it. 5, 6, 7. So that's probably where I put Eric at this point.
What do you think, Kyle? You think he did about what you expected? A little bit better, a little bit worse?
I think he did about what I expected. One player, I think this just goes to your point earlier, Nick, of the inflation hitting the middle guys, maybe the most. Kind of like actually maybe a perfect bell curve in terms of the impact, mostly seen in the middle. Varsho is a guy I would have loved to see go for a little bit less, but he's someone I actually really like this year. I just think he'll have a lot of opportunities. He can run. I think that he actually played better than his underlying stats from last year, in terms of like just his accounting stats, and home runs and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I think he'll outperform this year is my point. I'm not going to repeat everything that Mark said. $15 for Chris Bryant is a lot. I think, again, that just goes to the point. The middle guys went for a lot, but if he were a little less, that's a guy that I wanted to just buy in on, just a flyer. He's in Colorado, so even if the power is not all the way back, he'll probably have some decent results. So, what about you, Nick?
Yeah, I had Eric 7 going in. I think Eric's still probably right around 7. I think he's a fringe money contender. Didn't change a ton for me. I think both White Sox are the two guys that you guys already talked to someone about, most of the players he drafted. But Vaughn playing every day, hitting the middle lineup. He's not special, but cheap. I think it's fine. And I think Moncada I'm pretty excited about, actually, as a bounce back now that he's healthy. And for $1, that's...
Have it your way. Have it your way. Have it your way at Burger King.
May I help you, sir?
2 Whoppers, 2 Whopper Juniors, and 4 Coca-Cola. And would I have to wait long if you made 1 Whopper with no pickle and no lettuce?
No, sir. Hold the pickle, hold the lettuce. Special orders don't upset us. All we ask is that you let us serve it your way.
Oh, well, in that case, could I have the other Whopper with extra ketchup?
Sure. We can serve your rolled beef Whopper fresh with everything on topper. Any way you think is proper, have it your way.
Now, that's the way to do things. Our way.
Have it your way. Have it your way at Burger King. It's Burger King.
Let's see happening now.
And don't worry, I wasn't recording any of that before, so we'll keep that just between us.
Oh, yeah, the rest of the league doesn't get to know about that little convo we just had.
Welcome back to the Bash. Before that ad there, I was saying, I think, Eric, I had you 7. I think you're still right around that. You're a fringe money guy this year. I think you've had a really good come up in the last year and a half since you took over this team. And I highlighted both Vaughn and Moncada. Moncada specifically as guys I think you got a good value. So overall, solid draft, buddy. Let's go. I'm looking at a different list. I just realized Kyle was.
Oops.
No, dude, you're fine. Hold on. Let me just look at a.
The next one for me would have been Griffin.
Yeah, you just tell me who to click on. Click on him. Let's do Griff.
Can we not?
So Griffin was my 1. Spoiler alert. He can't go any higher. When he comes up, though, Mark, you hate Griffin. Tell us why Griffin did terrible.
No, I love Griff. He was someone who also pretty much had his entire roster filled out, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He had a lot of his offense,
Yeah.
especially. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just looking at it here. I do remember the Johan Duran buy, and I mean, he really only bought relievers, if I recall, which I loved. The Scherzer buy, I don't know, it could turn out to be something. $9 is a lot for someone who might not pitch until August, and also someone who's 40 years old. I don't think he really did a lot in the draft, not like positive or negative. He didn't have a lot of money to do a lot of stuff, but a $2 Wilson Contreras, $11 Ty France should give you some average. I still think he's in the top 3. And I don't dislike anything that he did, but nothing like really blew me away. Like, wow, he deserves his flowers for pick X.
Kyle, you and Griffin have historically had a beef. Last year. What do you think happened here?
I think going into the draft, he probably had the best offense, and leaving the draft, I think he probably has the best offense. So I think it's a little bit of a nothing burger, kind of like what Mark said. I think the one highlight, I don't like spending on catchers. $2 for Wilson Contreras is pretty awesome. Not only is he going to hit homers, but he can also steal. So that's pretty unusual out of a catcher. I really don't have much else to highlight. I like the guys that he got after the draft too. I think we all agree he spent a little bit too much on Robbie Ray, but that's huge because I think he will play this year. Yeah, so nothing special. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, we don't have to spend too much time because Griffin was my 1. He's still my 1. You're right, Kyle. I think in most of the offensive categories, he's the best set of all of us. I think it would have been hard for Griffin to have gone up just because he was already my 1. I think it also would have been hard because he didn't have a ton of money and he had most of his stars already filled out. He did a version of the stars and scrubs that most of us did, or a few of us did, pardon me. Great job, Griffin, bidding 2 on Wilson Contreras. Like Kyle said, I bid him up for 1. I thought, hey, I'll get a catcher. Did not get a catcher. But I think you did fine. I think you paid a lot for Duran, but again, going to be a closer. I think generally, though, Seawald's a great buy. I think you didn't make many pitching buys. So we can move off of Griffin, I think, pretty quickly without having to spend too much more time because he was in a great spot. He did about what I think he would have needed to do to stay in a great spot. He did not hurt himself.
Can I say one thing also that I just remembered? So Duran going for a lot, it's really interesting because I agree with the premise we keep pushing that early on players usually go for cheap, but I intentionally, my first nomination was Duran. And I did that intentionally because he was one of my favorite relief guys. I was hoping that he would go for cheap, but also excited by the idea of him going too much, right? Like it's a win-win. And I think this is a rare occasion where he went for a little bit more than he should have, at least in our draft, the way that we've been valuing relief guys. And he was early. So that was a little surprising. I just wanted to call that out. It was one of the rarities that was like a kind of against that rule.
I think you're right. He's a relief ace. He's one of the. I mean, he was up there with Felix Bautista for the first 2 or 3 months. He had, I think it was either a rough July or rough August last year that took him out of like the reliever of the year conversation. But he was really damn good last year. So, I mean, again, even at 18, solid. I just think when you get Sewell for 5, I like that one better. I think they're similar tiers almost. But again,
Exactly.
Durant's probably a closer, which is really valuable.
Yeah, 18 is not bad in a vacuum. It's just that you could get better value elsewhere.
But again, Griffin would have had to do something wrong to go out of, I think, where I had him going in, and I think he just stayed stagnant as my
Agreed.
probably likely favorite. Good job, Griff. Here's the way you had the list set up. But my list is not the same as yours. What the hell?
Oops.
Is it? Oh, it is. Never mind. It's exactly the same. Just lying to you there. Let's do Raymond.
Ooh, yay.
This will be a fun one.
I think, Kyle, you should go first here because you did not used to live with Raymond. The rest of us have lived with Raymond here.
I've never lived with Raymond, but I lived with one of his flannels for probably 4 or 5 years. So that was pretty cool.
You're coming out better than either of us there, I think.
Let's see here. Yeah, so we already talked trades, so that's how he got Glaber. One under the radar, or probably not really under the radar, but for talking about how all the middle guys went for so much, the fact that Michael Garcia went for 7 was awesome. He was really the last guy I wanted to target. I had $7 left as my max bid, and Ray just took it straight to 7. So it was good move. Good job getting Garcia. Definitely a guy I wanted. Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing the rest of the screen. I'll pull up my notes too. Low key, I think Starling Marte is probably a good buy. I think this is a rare occasion where Ray is trying to compete, but also he's heavily leaning towards the future. So Marte is kind of that middle ground where I think he will outperform what he did last year. He's been really good in the spring so far, from what I understand. Looks good, looks fast. And the one thing I'd like to call out, and I'll pass it to you guys, the thing that really impresses me by Ray is the fact that he was able to get Trout, Castillo, and Ramirez. So it's like those were probably my 3 favorite guys. I mean, Machado, sure, and others, but the fact that you're able to go out and buy 3 of maybe the top, 6 players available in the draft pool. I know he had all the money in the world, but good job executing on that. It gets, it's anxiety ridden when the dollar figure goes up, goes past what you think. So I think he deserves some credit there. I would have liked to see a couple of those $1 injury players like Sandy Alcantara, like you got, Nick. But aside from that, I think Ray did close to as good as you could.
Mark, what do you think?
Does he? I know he wasn't in the league last year, but does he know it's not 2 catcher?
Yeah, what the hell, dude? I needed Sean Murphy for $1, and he bid 2.
No, I'm just trying to give him a hard time. I had Murphy last year, and I was hard debating keeping him at 11. So a $2 buy there is phenomenal. Although Atlanta was super frustrating until Darno got hurt, they would play Darno 2 out of 3 games and not bat Murphy, the guy they went and traded for last year. But that's a whole nother story. Love the Garcia buy. Had him last year. Could really be something. Love just all the $1 guys. Willie Abreu, Rafael Verdugo's also at 6. Could be something. Kirilloff. He did what he needed to do coming into this league. Get the guys who are available, the Ramirez, the Trout, the Castillo. Do I think they're long for his team? Probably not, but it can hopefully turn into something. So I think Raymond had an incredibly solid draft. Love the $2 Emmett Sheehan, even though he's hurt right now as well. Unfortunately, he's still going to be at the bottom of the power rankings, the official power rankings. But I think, he's going to make solid move. I don't think he's going to do something dumb that will set him back this year. I only see him building on his team going forward.
Yeah, I had Raymond dead last. So, Raymond, I think you've definitely gone for me. I don't necessarily think you're the worst team, or if you are, I think you've really narrowed the gap. And if you were, it's because you had a really tough spot you were in. I think it would have always been tough to make your stars look great coming out of this. But like Kyle noted already, I think you got like 3 of my top. I think Zach Wheeler, is maybe the only player other than Trout, Ramirez, and Castillo, I think was definitely like for sure better than those three. Well, or one of those three, pardon me. I think you did a good job of, even though the numbers sucked, getting in there and just, getting the best players and making moves. And you've already made a move with Mark. We talked about it earlier. So I think you're doing a pretty good job there. Like Mark said, a lot of good $1 players there. Kyle Garcia is exciting because he might lead off every single day. He has a lot of speed. But even Polanco, even Abreu, all those guys, I think one or two of them end up being useful pieces for you moving forward. I think it's dumb you have two catchers. I would just cut maybe O'Hoppe, honestly. Personally, I don't think you need two catchers. But besides that, I think you're in a much better spot than you were going into the draft. I think you did exactly what you should have done. So I would move you up a little bit. Anything else on Raymond?
No, sir.
Good job, Raymond. Robert Andino died for this. Kyle, you kind of look like Robert Andino. What do you think about Zach's draft?
I like Zach's draft. I think Zach moved up a little bit for me. I think mostly because I had him one spot below Roman, but we'll punt and come back to that. But yeah, I think he did some good stuff. I think Zach was another team that had a little bit of a stars and scrubs approach and had a lot of his team already carved out. I think on the hitting side, I think he wanted to really push for power. I think early on, I think it's nice to get power. You don't lose the homers that you get, and you can try to make up for categories as the season goes on. So, while the cost isn't super fun, I do like Max Muncy still. I know he's a little banged up right now, but I don't think it's anything serious. I think it's an illness, actually. Stanton for $7. I know I've gotten screwed over a couple of times. Mark, you and I have traded, I think 2 years in a row. I try to buy power from you, and I get screwed each time. So Mark is 2-0 against me 2 years in a row. Stanton was involved in one of those trades.
Yes,
but
sir.
yeah, I think Stanton is another guy. I think we might be surprised this year by what he does. He still has the power. You look under the hood, things are still okay. My vote is that the average bounces up a little bit. He's not going to hit 40, but I think he still could hit 30. So I like it at $7, and you can always drop him. And then on the pitching side, I like you, Darvish. I think you guys said it before. It's hard to get a guy under $20 or so. So for $22, I think you, Darvish, is really fun. Don't forget, those Dodgers and those Padres, you get an extra start in there in the beginning. We were very frantic at the end of last year. So a little irrational not to care about it now, right? So I think that's a plus to get someone who's got an extra game in Korea.
Great point, dude. I could not agree with that more. The point about trying to maximize games there. Mark, what about you? Do you think Zach did a good job, bad job, anything different from what Kyle said?
Yeah, I think his hair is pointing up for me. Again, filling the IR spot. I know it's not the draft analysis here, but filling the IR spots, filling the minor league spots, super solid, savvy moves. I feel like I always have a blind spot for Zach in this league, and like nothing personal. I'm just like, and probably because he's out on the West Coast and we don't interact as much as when I first joined the league. But Zach is smart. Zach knows what he's doing, and he usually finishes in the top half of the league. And it's not going to surprise me when it happens again this year. Kyle already touched on Giancarlo. Love it. Was in on it. I didn't love. I was bidding him up on Muncy, and I wanted Muncy, but I didn't love the $34. Now again, at this point, throw the values out at this point, really though, and if I had gotten him, I would have, I'd probably be on here telling you why it was a good buy. So at the end of the day, it's not terrible. But it just right now looking at it, it seems like a lot, but it really isn't. There aren't too many other picks, the $22. I know you guys don't like it, but I love having the solid relievers. Having both Gratterall and Phillips does scare me a little bit. Even though the Dodgers do love to mix and match. So hopefully that works out in his favor. But yeah, super solid. I expect him to contend and make savvy decisions all year long.
Max Muncy and Nick Pivetta were two of the guys I loved down the stretch last year. I think Zach did a really good job without regurgitating things Kyle said, or you just mentioned, Mark, of probably almost better than anybody else in my mind coming into this draft saying, I have a couple categories I need to get. His biggest one was power, I think. And he bought Muncy, he bought Stanton, he bought Sawinski, who 26, 26, 31. Hell, even Brandon Jury, who plays first and second both, and who's on a terrible Angels team. No one's going to kick him out of the lineup there. 23. I think Zach, I had him in the top 6. I had him as, I think, 5 at the money already. So it's hard to move up, Zach. I think you have slightly moved up for me, though, because I was concerned you wouldn't get enough power. Because you only had a few roster spots, and you had some money, but not all the money. You had enough money that you did a good job filling out most of your spots with some power guys there. And on the pitching side, again, Pivetta is probably my favorite buy you got. I do think post-hypey Darvish is great, and Kyle makes a really good point about getting the extra game or two. It's unfortunate Brusdar is hurt and will not even make the trip, but Phillips will. So you have a couple guys who are playing an extra game or two for you there, and I love that on your end too. Generally, I think Zach is a favorite to finish in the money, a contender to win the league. I liked him coming in. I like him slightly more now. Good job, Zach. We all agreed, it sounds like, all three of us, that Zach is a little bit better now than he was, or more better, if it's not a little bit, than he was coming in. This is now a Zach podcast.
I think Gratterall's a fun guy too. $1 or $2. He might be the closer next year.
It's hard to have a bad $2 buy.
Yeah.
All right. Roman. Mark, you love Roman. How'd he do?
Love me some Roman. Give me 2 seconds to pull him up. It's loading right now, but I'm sure. Let's see here.
You're good. If you're not ready, Kyle can go.
I've got him.
Okay. Can you not see my screen, by the way? My screen's showing?
I'm on my phone, remember? So it's
okay. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure you guys will probably say this. Low-hanging fruit here. The $50 George Springer. Again, I know it was tough because he's the only guy there, but just seeing that was the one during the draft. Just it stung. I didn't like it, but when he was the best bet available at that point. But could you spend your money in other places? Was what stood out for me there. I do like the Imanaga buy at 16. Again, I think I said it, or I can't remember if it was while I was talking to you, Nick, before we started or once we were recording, but he's a pitcher list darling this off season, and I think there might be something there. And then I'm just trying to look at, I know a lot of these pitchers were already on his team. So those were the two buys that I would say really stood out for me. One that I liked, and then the Springer one that was just not for me.
Makes sense. Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll start with the hitting. I think Roman was my number 4 team overall in the preseason power ranking. So I obviously like his team. I think he still has one of the best offenses in our league. I will not regurgitate what Mark said. It's tough, right? Like you've talked about revisionist history, comparing different players, but can we compare players at all? Like $49 compared to like an $11 O'Neal. Like it's definitely not something in hindsight that I'm super into. So I agree with Mark. I still like his offense a lot. So I think there's a lot there. I will say, like, on the pitching side of things, I think he has a ton of talent and a ton of exciting talent. I like Imanaga also. But looking at his team, I like almost all of the pitchers, but they're all just young guys, high upside. And how many starting pitchers does he have? 9. So I'm not complaining because I'm the Globlin. So I want to pick up these globby guys. So, drop them, pick up some relief guys, and I'm just going to start munching. But yeah, for me, I think I put Roman down a couple of spots because if I were managing the team that he started with, I definitely would have made different decisions. Whether that's in the wrong or in the right, time will tell. I'm not sure. But just some of the decisions I think were probably not what I would do in his shoes.
I think that's pretty well said. And I think you're right to call out when I talk about the revisionist history thing. I think it's one fair process-wise to say you don't know this guy will go for this after one's already gone. But you do know sort of what you have when you are bidding. And I before I say anything else, I'd be curious, do you guys in a vacuum, forget about the teams you have, forget about the league we're in, would you rather have $49 Springer with a standard budget or the $79 Machado?
Machado.
What about you, Mark?
Like on our current team right now, or just
In a vacuum.
In a
Not on the
vacuum?
team right now. Just in a vacuum of a random league redraft. We all have the same budget.
Springer, because I'd rather have the extra $30.
Yeah, you disagreed there. I think it's pretty close. That's the only thing I'm going to say with that is just I think it's tough. But also, I don't think he had a good deal on him. That said, he was one of the best guys available, so you do what you had to do. Roman had the most guys kept, so it's hard to move Vermin much for me. I do think I would have gone, like Kyle said, slightly differently with who I did target / who I did pick up. I think he's also, like Kyle mentioned very astutely, and I want to say exactly the same thing, but you're probably going to want the reliever too. So probably one of these guys who's exciting and a good cheap pitcher may not stay on your team anyway, either through a move or through a pickup on the waivers. I think Roman's still in a really good spot. Roman's still someone I think is going to contend or be in the money, but I also had Roman 4, and he's slightly lower for me. It's hard to say anyone goes down because I think Roman made solid moves generally. It's just that with the team he had going into it, I think I liked it slightly more than I do now. You guys want to say anything else on Roman before we move on?
Did you guys hear that ad?
No.
Okay, cool. I have ESPN up on one of my screens, and I accidentally hovered over a Burger King ad that started playing while Kyle was talking about Roman's team. So I really am trying to get you guys flagged for copyright this episode.
Whopper, 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 Whopper.
It's not going to be a copyright. The king would be pleased to have us touting his juicy burgers. In fact, I'm going to throw in a couple Burger Kings in here.
You should see my inbox, Mark. It's full of, please let us advertise Burger King on this podcast. It makes millions. We would love if someone from your podcast bought a Whopper from us.
I was shocked neither one of you responded because it just started playing through my computer, and I was like,
we didn't hear it.
Want to view it first, and I was like, what the hell is going on? So that was all I had to add about Roman's team.
Nah, you're all good, dude. All right, well, here is a team called Mark's team. Kyle, you're not Mark. What do you think of Mark's team?
I really want to roast Mark, but Mark was one of my bigger movers post draft. I moved you up a couple spots, Mark. Especially given the trades, I put that in there too, into like all kind of one event, right? Like I know you didn't draft Jose Ramirez, but if you think about it, what was Grayson? Like maybe $14. What was Kyle what's his last name? Harrison. Maybe $6.
Yep.
And then you traded away a $31 Torres in order to get an $82 Ramirez, and then you also got Siri for $16. So the point is, you spent like what, $50 less than that on Jose Ramirez. So it doesn't work like that, right? There's an embedded value for Rodriguez that is valuable. I get that. I like your side of the trade. We've already talked through that. But Ramirez is a huge piece of your team, and now you get all of him, all of his juicy goodness, Burger King goodness for the whole season. But in all seriousness, it's better to get him now than in 2 months when you only get, part of the season, Jose Ramirez. So really good job getting him. I think Eloy, I know you kept him, but that's another, I think, pivotal part of your team. He's been great in camp. So if he stays healthy, I think this offense is just going to look a lot better than maybe people give it credit for. I think a lot of my favorite parts of your team were not actually drafted. They were just guys that you've picked up at the tail end of last season. And now through waivers, like getting Spencer Jones, I think was a savvy pickup. Let's see, in the draft, I'm trying to pick out who you actually picked up. But overall, I really like what you've done.
Yeah. I think, Mark, I had you 8 going in. I think I would raise you slightly. I think your team's definitely in a better spot now. And I'm going to try to be objective without, because Kyle's right. Definitely with Jose Ramirez, I think it helps me see you in a higher light now. I want to ask, we just roasted previously the 2 catcher thing. What are you doing with Sal Perez? Just think he's worth playing at first base? What are you doing with Eddie Hernandez Suarez there? They just depth.
The first base eligibility pushed me into buying him there at the end. Also, there weren't really too many guys left who could potentially give you 30 home runs, which I know it's a stretch at this point in his career, but I think it could still be in the bat. So, at that point, $10, I was willing to take the shot there. You know, wasn't my favorite pick, but if you do, maybe we can work out a trade.
Yeah, most of that comes, by the way, from I nominated him for $1 and said, all right, time to get a catcher for $1. And Mark said, no, I'm going to pay 10 for him. Joking aside, I think that one, probably not that one, though probably Eugenio is the one I like slightly less on the hitter side.
Yeah.
I love Chris Sanchez, by the way, dude. That's one of the better buys, I think, for $2. He's someone who I had not just someone to go for $1. I was going to go a little bit higher than 2 or 3 for him. At the stage he came up, I didn't press 3. Looking back, I kind of wish I had because I think 2 is really good for him. And other than that, I don't want to say things Kyle's already said. I do, though, again, just to reiterate, I think you've moved up slightly for me. And that's without the Ramirez. I think with the Ramirez included, you're now a team I think has a chance of finishing the money, which is exciting. And process here, I love what Raymond's doing, but I also love what you're doing in the sense you're going for it because a lot of teams are not going for it, I don't think, right now. And I think it's an unexpected thing that is a little bit exploitable, and I think you have a chance to, sort of capitalize on it. So good job zigging sort of while there's zag. What do you think? Are me and Kyle just wrong? Do you feel like you're a lot higher? You're a lot lower?
I mean,
do you love some of these picks?
I think we were both overall complimentary, right?
Yeah.
No, I know. I'm just saying, I'm curious what Mark thinks after the draft.
That would be pretty rude to invite me on and to just poo-poo all over my team. No,
I mean, Suarez and Perez.
Yeah, after the draft, I felt good. You had me 8, Kyle had me 8 or 9. I did think after the draft I moved up, and then I think not significantly, but could have said maybe 6th. I do think with the Ramirez trade, it happened again.
Oh, I hear the ad this time. I didn't hear it last time.
You heard it.
Yeah, this time I hear it.
The Burger King is coming.
Yeah, look. There were usually after our drafts, I always look back and I was like, God, what the hell was I doing there? I didn't really have any of those moments this year, which I was proud of myself. Again, the $10 Perez, would I do it again? Maybe, maybe not. But I've also found myself in this league always chasing power and RBIs and OPS. And I find myself with a lot of guys who might hit for average, but don't do anything else. And, pulling up the stats and seeing 7 for 19 with 5 singles and nothing else. I didn't want to take that chance anymore. So to your point, last year I was the first one to wave the white flag and start trying to accumulate assets to set up this year. And so going into the draft, I had a plan of go after hitting, get hitting. I knew I wanted to make the trade.
As much as I'm hitting you for Perez, sorry to interrupt you, but Real Muto is one of my favorite 3 or 4 buys from the whole auction. You get him for $11 early on.
Mm-hmm.
That is worth $11 to me. That's sort of why I'm critical of Perez, because the way they came out, it was him and then him. That's the only reason I even brought it up. I don't think Perez is a bad pick in itself.
Yeah. Again, I think he can return the $10 and being able to move him around. If he only had the catcher eligibility, definitely would not have done that. I realize now I shouldn't have made fun of Raymond when I forgot I had a second catcher on my roster. So Raymond, I'm sorry.
It's funny you did that.
The Suarez buy to defend it just because I'm on. I was chasing Muncy before that. Couldn't swallow the 34 and the drop off after what was left for there. Again, I'm on here talking about the Muncy buy, the Springer buy. Same thing can be said about the $16 Suarez, but he was all that was left, and this was before the middle infield and third base spots were filled by Gunnar and Jose, so I went with what was there.
Again, they're reasonable purchases. It's more just I was asking because you're on.
Yeah. But I think most of your power is coming from decisions that you've made in the past that were generally smart decisions.
Schwarber, Reese.
I think the Christian Walker trade
Walker's
was a
amazing.
trade that you
we
won.
both loved you in that one. Yeah.
I think Hoskins, that was a buy that you had from. Or no, that wasn't that Griffin, and then he dropped it.
Yeah,
Hoskins, and then you picked them up, knowing that there's some value from a keeper perspective after you kind of waved the flag, which again, smart move. CJ Abrams, not a ton of power. I think he'll actually have a little bit less power than last year, but I think he'll go up in stolen bases. So that's another one that was really smart. You picked him up. Maybe not less power than last year, but I don't think his OPS isn't going to be crazy. I don't think. But
yeah.
Anyway, but that's not what he's for. So the point is, you're making, I think, pretty smart decisions. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Perez. I think the only concern I have about Perez is that he might not play a whole lot.
Yeah, if they ever get someone to contend with him for DH, he's kind of in trouble, I think, because he caught less than half the games last year when he did play. But as long as he plays some first base, clearly he played enough to keep eligibility and DHs, he's probably going to play 130, 140 games, I think, still. So I'm not too worried about the games played, personally. We've spent a lot of time on Mark, though, I guess. Do you guys have any closing thoughts on Mark? Mark, do you have any closing thoughts on yourself?
I would love if my pitchers stopped getting hurt, or if they are going to get hurt, go on the IL so I can do stuff with them, like Kyle said. But other than that, no. Let's move on.
It's hard to raise you when you damage Devin Williams.
That one really hurt. I made the trade on Saturday, was feeling great, and then I pulled up my team on Sunday just to check some stuff, and I was like, oh, Edward Cabrera's hurt. Oh, cool, Devin Williams is hurt. Awesome, hopefully they come back. But you have Pompous or whatever his name is.
The other
Piams,
thing, the other thing that scares me with Williams, especially with trade rumors brewing, get it? But seriously, the thing that scares me is that I think their doctors cleared him, and he's like, nah.
He wants the second opinion. It's interesting. Yeah, I've read about that some too.
So it almost makes me feel like he's not super happy with Milwaukee, and that's just kind of a weird situation if they're trying to trade him. But he's obviously one of the best, and hopefully he's healthy, plays normal, and he's still a good value for you, Mark. I know I'm not super into relief guys, but when you have some of the top relief pitchers in all of baseball for those values, I think it's a win.
Milwaukee's front office has caught a lot of strays recently, just because Corbin Burns in his arbitration was really unhappy with them. It's interesting. Yeah. I read the same thing you saw though, Kyle, and was just like, interesting that he says he does not feel okay. They're saying he's fine though.
It almost seems like they want to trade him, and they're like, yeah, he's healthy.
He's gone. Sign the deal. Bye.
Yeah.
I need me to get Simon John.
Yeah.
Anyway, though, this is not the Brewers podcast. This is the Stan the Man podcast. Mark, this is literally your father. How did he do?
Let's pull him up and review.
Or if you're not ready, Kyle, you can go first. He's not your daddy, but you can talk like he's your daddy.
Oh my God.
I've got it now. It pulled up.
How did Papa do, Mark?
I love the $8 Ezekiel Tovar. That was someone that I kicked the can on trying to decide at 16 to keep. I think there is 2020 potential there. Absolute ceiling 25-25 because he plays in course if he just runs. The Xander Bogaerts 26 might look like a lot, but once he gets that second base eligibility, I like it. And hopefully now that he's not playing shortstop, maybe a little less taxing, can focus on hitting again. He also was like one of the hottest hitters and then just went to one of the coldest hitters last year. So maybe just be consistent. And it'll be good for Papa Spark. A $1 Joey Meneses could be interesting. Looking at the pitching, I don't think the $69 Wheeler, that's tough to swallow after watching the 38 Nola. Wheeler is better, but not head and shoulders better. So that's the revisionist history, all of that. That was the only one. $69, $70 on the guy is always tough, but I don't think he made any huge leaps, but I don't think he got worse. Holding serve, if not slightly better after the draft.
Yeah, I mean, Bogaerts specifically, I think Bogaerts is one of the best buys on the hitting side for a guy who was probably like my fourth favorite hitter going in, and I think getting him sub 30 is incredible. It's close to as good as Nola in my mind. I really like that one personally. I'm sorry, actually, Kyle. What do you think? I did not mean to jump in there.
I was going to say the same thing, that compare that to the $49 Springer. I probably like Xander a little bit more than Springer.
I like Xander straight up, yeah.
So $26, that's pretty nice. So yeah, surprisingly, like one of the best picks in the draft. And then Wheeler, like your dad had a lot of money, Mark. So I feel like spending up, he had to. I think unpopular. I kind of like Castillo more than Wheeler this year, but Wheeler was the one or maybe the two, depending on who you are, available in the draft. And so yeah, like I have no problem with that at all. I don't really have many other call outs. I do just think again, some of the pickups he made after the draft, like uh, Jason Adam on Tampa Bay, kind of low key, but I think really important actually. He also picked up Naris, good, but not as important to me. And then Fetty, I think, is a fun flyer.
Yeah, well said. Mark made a good point. I think Tovar is one I want to call out. Good job with that one. Bogarts again though, I think is one of the best buys hitting wise in the whole auction as far as value goes. It's funny seeing he paid that for Bogarts, 26 and 27 for Nimmo. I've had Nimmo the last 2 years. I think Nimmo is awesome, and Nimmo is an archetype the same way I love my like specific power hitter who like breaks out late and is like 30 and is keepable for like the minimum. I think in the draft or the auction, another great archetype is the guy like Brandon Nimmo, the guy who leads off for a team that's pretty solid. Does not have amazing power, doesn't have amazing speed, but hits for an okay average. Almost like if Nick Markakis led off for every team. That's what I want. And I love that Nimmo does that. So I didn't keep him for, I think he would have been 16. He went for more than that, so I feel good about that. And where he went in the auction too, I couldn't get him obviously, Jack, but I think he did a good job getting him. I would have paid as much as it cost. When he went, I remember him being clearly my favorite hitter. So even though you paid 27, that seems crazy. And I know we've chided people for spending too much. I think it's fine. And Zach Wheeler for me was like my SP 3 or 4. You had a lot of money, like Kyle said. I think you did a good job getting one of the best pitchers in baseball. For me, Jack was in the bottom 2 or 3 teams going into the draft, and I think now he's squarely moved up. He's one of the highest movers for me. We've also seen Jack knows how to play the year out. He's been in this league for like 5-6 years now. And does a really good job of managing day to day. So I feel much more confident in you now than I did a couple weeks ago, Jack. Good job, buddy. I'm not your son, but if I was, I'd say good job, Dad.
I know we have less than a minute here, but
I was gonna say, you want to jump into hop back in to finish out?
I think it would be nice. I think Griffin called out one little mailbag-ish item that could be fun to address with Mark. Yeah,
let's do it. We've got like 3 more teams too.
Oh,
we got Bucher and well, I think that's it, isn't it?
Me and Miz.
Yeah, perfect.
Let's jump out.
We'll jump out. We'll do me and Miz into the mailbag.
Dynamic duo. All right. See you in a second.
See you at Burger King.
May I help you, sir?
If I wanted a Whopper and asked you to hold the pickles and hold the lettuce, would I get to hear you sing?
No, sir. You'd get to hear us sing. Hold the pickle, hold the lettuce, special order, don't upset us. All we ask is that you let us serve it your way.
Hey, you got one big hit.
Well, the Whopper's one big hamburger.
Well, the Whopper's one big hamburger. It's one big hamburger.
Have it your way. Come on now, have it your way. Have it your...
Welcome back. As we say, hit the road, Jack. We think you did a little bit better than you were coming in, or at least I do. So I think we all do. Any last words before I move on, guys?
Nah, let's do it. I think we have 2 left.
Yep. Let's talk about everybody's favorite topic, me.
Ugh.
Kyle, you knew me first. What do you think of my team?
Let's take a look. Here, I'll share my screen too, so everyone else can check you out.
Sorry, I'm trying to share it. I just realized the host disabled sharing.
Yeah, I don't like other people to share.
Kyle does not like when I share on his Zooms.
He doesn't mind sharing the Burger King ads.
Yeah.
Whopper, 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 Whopper.
All right. It should be sharing. Hopefully it
it's
works.
loaded.
All right. Well, I'll just start talking, and you guys let me know. So one call out, you did get your $1 catcher, and I know it probably wasn't your first choice. It may not have been your second choice. It may not have been your third choice, but I still actually like Garver a good bit. So that's just goes to show you what's out there from catcher perspective. You're another team. Obviously, I had you high up. I had you 1 actually. So there wasn't much you needed. I don't even want to talk about the injury bug because we're recording here on, what is it, the 11th, the 12th. So who knows what's going on. I'm just going to leave it there, but nothing you can do about that. Yeah, I like what you did. You had a lot of $1 buys. This is another thing where, especially for teams that aren't necessarily competing this year, I regretted not being more in on some of these guys. I got a $4 Jeffrey Springs, which I was happy about. But for next year, it would certainly be fun if I could say that I had a $2 Sandy, a $1 Kershaw, a $2 Woodruff, and you can say that about all three. So I think you deserve some credit on those. I think that's actually a big deal. Roki Sasaki is another one. I think the way that we're talking about a lot of these international signings this year, Sasaki is actually probably a better prospect than any of them from this year, and probably better than last year too. Like Sasaki's only 22 years old. So unlike a lot of the players that come from Japan, I think he has the stuff, but he also has the age to grow. I guess I'll leave it there and throw it to Mark. I mean, I think Jung Ho Lee is another exciting player. I think a lot of people talked about his batting average and what he's capable of. I think this is a little bit conservative in the projections here, but I think the thing that's exciting about Lee is some of the power that we've seen in the spring, some of the exit velocities. So I think that's a really nice buy. And I'm sorry, Mark, I did a fake out there, Burger King fake out, but I will throw it to you now.
All good. Yeah, I was kind of pissed you snaked Lee from me. I don't understand why the projections are so low on him, especially if he's going to get 500 plate appearances, almost 500 plate appearances. I mean, there's really not much to say. You won the league last year, so I'm not going to say not one, because until someone dethrones you, that's how it's going to be for me. Filling up the injury roster spots with three, if all three were healthy and you said your starters were Woodruff, Kershaw, and Alcantara, that's awesome, to go along with everything that you have. The $1 buys, De La Cruz, also, like, I don't know. Do we really have to sit here and tell you how great you are on your podcast?
Yeah. One quick call out, guys. We're not doing ourselves any favors. If Nick has Strider, Alcantara, Kershaw, and Woodruff all healthy next year, I mean, these guys are going to be $6, $7, $7, and I guess what, 16? Not great, guys. Come on, we gotta.
I can't trade Alcantara and Steele for who was Raymond's big Castillo on like April 15th. It's gonna be a lot of fun for everyone.
I think an interesting thing that Kyle said like over an hour ago now is that when I was talking about the draft, I feel like it went like a bell curve, where I do think some of the best values were the guys like Ramirez at 82. I think actually is a relative value. I had him going for more than that. Nola obviously I'd going for more than that. Bogarts I'd going for a lot more than that. But I think at the very end, I think Mark, you said you were pretty happy with how this auction went for you because most of the years you have some regrets. This one, I think is probably my best auction I've ever had. I think a lot of it is I protected myself from myself just by having no money. I had to wait. I had to just do nothing because I do think at the other end of the bell curve, there's still, as evidenced by the waivers we already talked about, there were some amazing players left on waivers. And then even though I had the lowest money going in, I actually had the hammer for the final like 20 picks that were left and was able to get for $2 instead of $1 these guys that no one else could get, like Alcantara, like Woodruff. So I think it says more about me that I have a tougher time when I have more money. Being patient was actually good for me, I think. That said, I really appreciate the kind words you both said. Nothing really matters. I know Kyle hinted at it. If Cole misses the whole year, I think it really hurts me. I had myself 2 coming in. And purely from a power rankings standpoint, I think I'm probably either at 2, maybe a little bit lower even, just because if I lose Cole, I'm kind of in trouble. And we're not out of the woods necessarily yet on Acuna either. That said, I loved Payamps. I loved Reese Olson. I loved Presley. I think I got good relievers, not great ones, but good ones in a league for $1 each. Garver's like my catcher 13 or 14, which is fine because a bunch of us own multiple catchers. So like I'm fine paying $1 for him. No, seriously, last year I had Kirk and then I had Perez and then I also ended up getting Cal Raleigh, who I just said was like catcher 4 or 5 off waivers. I think there's probably going to be a catcher on waivers or Garver stays healthy and he cooks. I'm not crazy about Merrifield. He's probably my least favorite pick, even though he was only $1. But I really like Jung Hoo Lee, which you guys already talked about. I think the projections are crazy low on him, especially with the plate appearances more than anything else. He's literally going to lead off against righties and lefties. He's my favorite dude I got. Nobody wants to hear me talk about myself, though. So I think we can move on off of me. I'm generally pretty happy with how it went. But again, I think I'm probably staying stagnant or slightly down just because the fact that Cole's hurt. Let's cover everybody's favorite team, though. Mark.
We did, Nick.
Mark, you have a Mark group chat with Mark Missigman. How did he do?
Gotta give it to my fellow Mark. I think he crushed it. No, let me pull up. Sorry, I'm being facetious.
Let's move on now.
Oh God.
Let's move on.
I don't have his team. I'm being facetious. My apologies.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Give me half.
He also had a lot of his team filled out. I think he had literally every hitting spot filled out besides one. So the hitters are not mostly guys he just got. He drafted O'Hearn. He drafted who else? He drafted O'Hearn, Donovan. That might be it as the hitters, right? Any other ones?
That's it.
Yeah, he had his whole team on offense drafted already, besides O'Hearn for 3 and whatever it is, $2 Donovan.
Right off the bat, $4 AJ Puck. I know he's everyone's spring sleeper. Love it. He's been filthy. If he sticks as a starter and he's throwing the way he's throwing, tremendous value. But if the starter experience doesn't work for the second time, put him back in the bullpen. And he was a terrible closer at the start of the year from personal experience. But if he continues to throw like this, could be elite and, maybe get him out of Miami next year. And when saves are worth twice as much, who knows? Also love the $2 Jordan Hicks. Again, it looks like Team Miz was all in on the guys who were, flamethrower relievers turned starters this year. Hicks has been, I think he just had like 6 strikeouts the other day. So stay healthy, continue, want to make sure the stamina is there to throw 6 innings and keep the velocity up. So if it does, another $2 buy that I love. $34 Snell is not bad at all either if he can stay consistent. Again, someone who was on the Team Sparky experience last year, who I graciously donated to Kyle because I was bored and didn't want to hold on to him anymore on the waiver.
And I was like, good job, Mark. Blake Snell sucks. And then Kyle picked him up and he was Cy Young.
I remember the day that I cut him. I was like, I can't drop Blake Snell, but he had like a 5 ERA. He was terrible. I was so done with him. It was like death by 1,000 cuts. Every start, I'd be like, all right, I'm not doing this again. And then I'd be like, oh, but he's pitching against the Diamondback, like at the beginning of the
Kyle
year.
got him like Burger King, got him a massage, like tongue kissed him or something. He fixed him in a way that I did not understand. He was so bad when you picked him up, Kyle. And then he was the best pitcher in baseball almost.
Yeah. He didn't walk a single guy for like the last 90 innings that he pitched. Like, it's just absurd.
It's a testament to being in a bad clubhouse and then going to Kyle's clubhouse and him fixing everything.
You know what? I'm tired of this, going from a bad, like, I want guys who can thrive in a toxic environment. So if he can't do that, then get out of here. He's
soft.
You know where the door is. Yeah. None of this new age stuff. Like, we're going to be tough. We're going to be toxic. It's locker room talk on Team Sparky's clubhouse. I mean, a lot of this stuff to talk about is the pitching from the draft. I didn't do a power ranking. I don't know how high I would have had him to begin. I don't think I'm moving him up tremendously after this, but it's not like, wow, where were their mistakes? The only real mistake was the Giolito pick, but $2. I at that point I would have just held on to him and stashed him for the year, because if he is healthy, he's still only 30 years old. But that would be the only, like, if I was missed, that would have been the only regret, is now dropping him after that.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty reasonable take. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, Mark's team is one that I really liked going into the draft. I think you guys said it. His offense was pretty much filled out. I think a lot of his studs, for whatever reason, were kind of underrating. Maybe they're slightly down on slight off years. It's kind of crazy to say Bichette's year last year was an off year, right? Even Mullins, I really like. Reynolds, I like. Tavares, I like. Estrada, I know he has him on the bench, but I think he's probably going to be a starter. So, Semien. So I like his team. And I didn't even mention his best player, Trey Turner. So I like his team. I like a couple of the targets like Mackenzie Gore, but just wanted to call out, I think Mark had $285 going into the draft. I don't know where all the money went because
Mackenzie Gore.
Yeah, like I hate to be critical. If I were Mark, I definitely would have tried to target a couple of higher up, top end players, whether that is 20 some dollar. I know you don't need a shortstop, but 20 some dollar Xander Bogaerts, or whether it's one of the middling starting pitchers like a Yu Darvish. I could have just seen a little bit more. So I like the team overall. I think Andrew Painter was an awesome pickup. That's one that Nick's already mentioned. But I think it's just one where maybe the targets that Mark had are a little different than maybe some of the top end guys I would have targeted, because I know he didn't have a lot of money, but $285, you do have some cash to play around with. I would have tried to use almost all of it on one or two picks.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, Kyle. I don't want to say everything you just said. I think the last part of that was exactly what I was going to say, which is it's easy to say the best like Bogaerts or Nola or Darvish is what you should have done, because obviously in hindsight, the cheapest guy at the end of a tier is always the way to go. I do think, though, probably in his position, because he had a lot of guys kept too, I would have probably loved to have gotten someone like Nola if you could have afforded that, or if you couldn't afford that, and you could have, but it would have been close. I would have probably been all in on someone like Darvish, maybe Musgrove, something like that. I think Mark really needed another starter, like an ace, to really put him over. In my mind, I think I had Mark around 9 or 10 going into the draft, and he probably is still pretty stagnant for me. I don't think he got worse, and he's a lot of good. He has a couple of really elite hitters, and then a decent supporting hitting cast. Most of it he already had coming in. But to me, he feels like a team probably squarely in the middle. If he spikes a pretty good start, I could see him buying and having a chance to finish the money. If he has a bad start, I could see him being someone who sells, and he has a lot of good pieces to sell. So you've got a wide range of outcomes still, Mark, I think. I don't have anything super new to say about the picks you made other than that. I think Mackenzie Gore you liked because he's someone you had last year, and he had a pretty good second half. Again, though, I would have probably targeted someone a little bit higher end than him. I love Clark Schmidt, and I love, like Mark already talked about, AJ Puck. So, okay, not special. Solid job. That's all our teams too, guys. Good job.
Cool.
I guess as we talked about it, you can probably sort of tell from our voices. Anybody have anything final to say about the draft? Yeah, how you thought it went? Anything crazy? Who had an amazing draft, or highlight anything else we haven't already talked about? Final takeaways.
No, I think I give out all of my analysis.
I'll keep it short, but Charlie called out a great question. Are we valuing the remaining dollars enough going into the draft? And I think my answer is they weren't that valuable compared to what a lot of people thought. So
a lot of people.
That's my opinion.
I think I agree with you.
Who knows?
No, I'm saying I think I agreed with you to a T going in, and I think we were kind of right. Is my point. I don't know if a lot of people thought that.
I mean, who knows though? Like,
you're right.
Anything could happen this year. But I don't know what you have, Nick. Do you have any closing thoughts? I think there's one.
Nope, I had nothing else special to add about it other than just it was a good draft. I'm happy with it.
I know this is a marathon brought to you by Burger King, but
let's do our Griffin.
We do have a little Griffin comment. Do you want to read it off, or would you like?
Yeah,
me
you
to?
got.
Okay, so Mark, Griffin did the math on this, and he took a look at last season final standings. I was kind of in the mix, but it was Nick and Brandon, really, right? So final stretch, there's a player that he was able to replace, taking Nate Lowe the entire season, taking Nate Lowe out and replacing him with a single player that was available, and Brendan would have won straight up. And I think Griffin is trying to highlight something here, and I can break down the math that Griffin shared. It is bizarre. I did not think this was real at first. No, so it's a hitter. It's a hitter to replace Nate Lowe. And
he's like Trey Turner.
Yeah, I think Griffin's point is that this player's really good, and he's proving that he's good because if he had used this player instead of Nate Lowe, Brendan legitimately would have won the entire league.
Yep. Assuming no other moves were made, though, too.
Right.
Okay.
So
do I get to guess who it is?
Yeah. If you want
it Jake McCarthy?
Ding, 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 ding.
You get a Whopper.
Yeah. Griffin, Venmo me $10 for Burger King tomorrow, please.
Read the math though, because Griffin, joking aside, did all the math, and it does check out. It is
Yeah.
assuming that neither me nor Kyle nor nobody else makes a different move, seeing the way the categories are changing. But he would have won by half a point.
But
Nick, this reminds. Sorry, go ahead, Kyle.
Well, I was going to say I agree with you, Nick, that we would have adjusted, but at the same time, Brendan would be able to bank all of the stolen bases, and then McCarthy was not even in the majors at the end of the year. So then Griffin didn't even account for the replacement value that Brendan would have had. So Nick, Griffin is making a good point. So reading off the stats here, and I'm just taking Griffin's word for it. Like, I have not checked the stats, but I think it's correct. But
by the way, this is a fun chat me and Kyle got from Griffin at like 10 a.m. today.
Yeah.
There's no reason for this. It was just, hey guys, did you know Brendan would have won if he did this one thing? No idea why he was doing this.
Yeah, or the better question, how many players he's done this for?
He's like fact-checked every player who's available at any point.
So Nate Lowe had 89 runs, 17 home runs, 82 RBI, 1 stolen base. His average was 262, OPS 775. McCarthy had 37 runs, so down 52, 2 home runs, down 15, 26 stolen bases, up 25. So that's, as you can tell, the kicker. And then average was 243, OPS was 644. Those wouldn't have really moved around that much. That was one of Brendan's largest strengths, OPS especially, I think. And he had such a large base there, so the sample size of McCarthy wouldn't impact it very much. So Brendan, the change, you would have gone from 1,231 runs to 1,179. You would have lost half a point on that change. 347 home runs to 332 home runs. You would have lost a whole point on that. So not looking good so far. RBIs would have gone down 1,233 to 1,167. 0 point change in our rankings on that. So that's good news. He had a big lead there. And then the kicker is 171 stolen bases to 196. You would have gained 3 points, and that would have been a winning move for you. 0 changes for average, 0 changes for OPS. So he would gain effectively 1.5 points in the standings just to pass Nick. Pretty crazy.
Pretty crazy Griffin did that randomly on his own.
So stolen bases, guys.
So someone should trade me for Whit Merrifield then, it sounds like.
I find it more interesting that Griffin chose to undertake that assignment with no, just, hey, I'm going to do this. If he was the one who finished second and he did that, it would have made a lot of sense. But just doing that out of the blue, when did I miss the Jake McCarthy hype? What started
You
this?
didn't. It was all Griffin. It was literally just Griffin's hype. Griffin called in and said he was Trey Turner.
I mean,
okay.
There was at one point Jake McCarthy was ranked in the top 120 or so for Dynasty, but I don't know. He's
okay.
He's not going to be a starter. I think he's not even going to make the team.
That's what I was going to say. Is you're literally talking about a guy who won't even make an 85 projected win team.
Yeah.
But no, good job, Griffin. It's a fun thing to talk about. We just did there. It's a lot of research you did too.
And that's the mailbag for today. Hopefully we get more mailbag. Send it to mailbag@burgerking.net.
Yeah. All right, guys. Any final takeaways? We've been, like Kyle said, doing a marathon here. Mark, what do you think? You didn't do power rankings. Why don't you just impromptu say power rankings so people can call you out at the end of the season?
Sure. Give me 1 second to pull up the standings, but I'd say 1, Team Sparky, say rank is number 1. 2, I'm going to go Brown Bombers. 3, Dan the Man. 4, Team Miz. 5, Raymond the Coliseum.
All guys who lived with you or are your dad?
6, Roman the Coliseum. Where's Fantrax doesn't want to load now. 7, Bread's Toast. 8, team name under reservation or renovation.
I have a reservation for that.
I'm reserved with that, dude.
Robert Andino died for this at 9. Let's be nice to Griffin and say he'll be 10. Kyle 11. Nick 12. Brendan 13. And then
Eric.
Eric 14, and
That's it. You got them all.
no, they're 15.
There's 14, Mark.
Yeah.
Oh, they're 15.
Also, by the way, that's like almost the exact opposite of my rankings. So I can't wait for one of us to look silly.
Lock it in.
Yep. No, good job. Thanks for joining us, Mark. Way to go, buddy. That was a long one. We appreciate your insight. Do you have anything else you want to tell the fans, everybody who watches, to hear your voice?
I hope you all enjoyed the episode. Can't wait to be back on later in the season. I hope everyone has fun this year. Everyone stays, all their players stay healthy, and we have a great season and have someone other than Nick win it at the end.
I lost 2 years ago.
Peace out.
Seriously, the biggest takeaway is that Mark went.
Oh. Oh my God. Rage quit.
Dude, that's I was really gonna say. I love that he went for it. I love that he tried this year with getting Jose Ramirez, because he's right, by the way, when he said he was the first to sell last year. He punted. Okay. Well, as I was going to say a second ago, Mark will probably finish like 9th. Even though I was about to give him his flowers. All right.
He said he wanted a dramatic exit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, enjoy the podcast. Let us know where we're wrong.
And you know what they say at Burger King, Sparky? You have it your way.
You did, baby. Love you, Cal. Talk to you later, buddy.
Love you, buddy. See ya.
See ya.